All right, Top Billin, here's why it's hard to have an intelligent football discussion, which this channel is aimed at, right? I always say I want real football heads, not casual fans. Deaf to the casual fans. You see me say it all the time, right? Because on the last content item, when I said this, right, Georgia's just the #1 recruiting conglomerate. I'm going to continue to hammer this home. Nobody recruits better than the University of Georgia. Nobody, especially when we're talking about recruiting on the defensive side of the ball, but just recruiting overall. But the defensive side of the ball, nobody's messing with the University of Georgia. I would also go on to say that really has nothing to do with anything if we're talking about on-field coaching, which I don't think the University of Georgia is good at. Now, does it have a chance to be? Everybody has a chance to improve. However, that's just not Georgia's strong suit. So you can have all the talent in the world, which Georgia does, and not be able to develop the talent and not take the talent to the promised land, right? So if we're talking about this particular content item here, I will say this, and let me repeat, in which I guarantee you we're going to have people come in the comment section and be like, well, so what, man? Georgia sucks. It ain't won a damn national title since 1980, Cletus. You'd be like, yeah, Ethel, you're right. I will say this again. Georgia's not messing with Alabama in any way, shape, form, or fashion when it comes to on-field play and player development. However, it's not up for debate who is the better recruiter at this particular point in time because we have facts, right? Recruiting, this is not a guesstimate or something like that. We have actual recruiting rankings and finishes in those, right? So going back the past 4 years is how you judge recruiting. You got to judge it in a 4-year clip. Ever since 2017, when Coach Smart was able to get a full recruiting cycle in at the University of Georgia, they have had a better average ranking than anyone else in all of college football, which includes Alabama, obviously. All right, so let's go ahead and check this out and add it up for the people who are in the comment section that don't understand recruiting rankings and it's just casual fans that just had to come in fanboy. Look, 2017, Alabama was the #1 team in the country. Georgia, in its first full recruiting cycle, finished #3. All right, so that's 1 Alabama, 3 for Georgia for that cycle. The very next season, Alabama was #5 to finish the recruiting rankings, right, which was a pivotal year, I believe, for Alabama football, and I will come back to that in a little bit. And Georgia ended up #1, right? So #1 finished for Georgia in 2018. #5 finished for Alabama in 2018. 2019, Alabama was back on top, #1. That's hard. But Georgia was right on that ass at #2, right? So remember, average finish per recruiting cycle is what you're looking at. So that was #1 for Alabama in 2019 and #2 for the University of Georgia in 2019. And we see it here, the last full recruiting cycle would be the 2020 class, and you got #2 for Alabama. And here you have the Dogs back on top at #1. So if you add that up, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to add that up. You have a 2.25 average finish for the University of Alabama over that 4-year stretch. And you have a 1.75 finish for Georgia over the same exact time period. No other team like that was close. Even Ohio State had a 14 finish 1 year in a #5 or something like that, and their average rank per finish, or the average per finish, was something like a 5. So feel free to name any other team out there if you want. Give me the average ranking, and let's see if it can beat a 1.75 from the University of Georgia. Simple. All right, so let's get down to the brass tacks of the matter. Alabama has not recruited, or let me say this, Alabama over a 2 or 3 year stretch did not recruit as well as it had previously in like the previous 10 seasons or whatever like that. Alabama is the premier defensive program in the country over the past 15 years, and it lost sight of that. The 2020 class, I think, gets back to that and gets Alabama back on track to being exactly what it was in the past as far as focusing on elite defensive players. It became an offensive juggernaut here for the past few years, and it did not win a national championship as an offensive juggernaut, right? It just didn't. Right, even with Tua and Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Devontae, all these guys like that did not win a national championship with all that elite offensive talent, Najee Harris and stuff like that. But check this out: in the 2017 class, you can see why it's starting to go downhill. Starting with 2017, let's go through some of these defensive guys. Dylan Moses, I think he's a good player. Is he all-world? He has not been all-world at the University of Alabama. But he's coming back for a senior season, and he could damn well very much be all-world because he is as talented as it gets. I love Dylan Moses. You guys know that if you've been on this channel. I had him on my podcast when he was in high school. All right, so let's go down some more. Your next guy is LeBron Ray. LeBron Ray's been injury-prone. You have not gotten much out of LeBron Ray. However, he's still in town, and this could very much be the year. If you see what I'm saying right here, I think Alabama has a chance to be very good this year. A lot of these guys from this 2017 class ended up still in freaking Tuscaloosa. It's crazy to think that these guys are still in Tuscaloosa here. But now check this out. Where are the next defensive players? You got two guys who are just kind of average, right? Or Dylan Moses above average, LeBron Ray average at best as far as the production goes, and you see why Alabama didn't win a national championship. The offense was fine. It was the defense that felt it. Where are the next guys? Is it Vandarius Cowan? Nope. Was kicked off the team. Jerez Parks? Nope. Better off modeling, right? Coming up out of the water with baby oil on or something like that. Isaiah Buggs? Very good player, but he was your short-term player because he came from junior college, so he wasn't there when it was time to get it popping, like within the last year where they needed to win a championship. But obviously, I think they won the championship when his first year on campus. Markel Benton, average as pie. I completely missed on Markel Benton. I think he's now since transferred. Vidarian Mathis, I think Vidarian Mathis is pretty good. He's still on campus too, so if you see what I'm getting at right here, I think you've gotten a pretty decent amount out of Vidarian Mathis. So nothing all-world, though. Chris Allen, been kind of injury-prone. He has not stepped up. He's still on campus, though. Other than that, where we at? Nothing. You're not getting nothing. Kyrie McDonald, I think he's transferred as well. You've essentially got nothing out of this particular setup here when you thought it was going to be very good outside of Dylan Moses being above average. Think about it. Let's go on to the next year. This was a bad year, too. If you string together 2017 and you didn't get the most out of those kids and you followed up with one of your poor recruiting efforts, right? You lost a lot of guys to the University of Georgia in this cycle. They got his ass whooped. They got their ass whooped by the University of Georgia in this cycle. We can compare it, but they wanted a lot of the kids that ended up going to the University of Georgia. All right, so Ayabi Anoma, you got nothing out of him. He transferred. He was your linchpin. He was your guy. Him and Patrick Surtain. Surtain has been above average. Nothing all-world about Patrick Surtain, but I think he could have a big year if he could put it all together right there. Stephon Wynn, yeah, not exactly all-world. He's a contributor, but, I mean, is he a household name or anything? Jalen Armour Davis, not exactly. Josh Jobe, I think he could have a pretty big year this season, but what have you gotten out of Josh Jobe? Nothing really, right? He's been a career backup thus far. Who else? Cameron Latu ended up switching to the offensive side of the ball at tight end. Didn't get nothing from him. Ali Cahoe, you got him after the fact with Washington, coming from Washington. He's been very good on special teams, not contributed. Matter of fact, 2 true freshmen ended up starting over him in Dylan Moses' stead, and McMillan with him not playing as well. He couldn't step up to the plate and beat out 2 true freshmen. Where else we got here? Christian Barmore. I like Christian Barmore. I think he's very good. So he's a guy that I think is going to have a pretty big year, and I think you've gotten more out of him than you have the rest of those other dudes, and technically speaking. Eddie Smith, nothing. So the rest of these guys, Jalen Moody, no, 2 true freshmen over him as well, right? I forgot about Jalen Moody. Jordan Davis, I'm not sure. I think Jordan Davis didn't actually end up signing. So those are 2 straight years. Think about that. Just those 2 seasons right there, to me, is the reason why Alabama did not win the national championship the past 2 seasons. It had more than enough talent on offense, and it had a good core of defensive players like Xavier McKinney, Anthony Jennings, and all those guys previously from the 2016 class, Terrell Lewis and people like that, but did not have the depth. Your depth would have came from these 2 classes, and these guys been able to rotate and step up. So you had to rely on true freshmen, and it shows you just how when they say game of inches, they're not. That goes by more than just the on-field play. Just an inch here, inch there with your recruiting, man. Alabama's back winning the national championship the past 2 years, or at least one of the past 2 years. But got to hit on these players, man, right? So the player development wasn't popping. The coaching staff, I think, was one of the worst coaching staffs that they've had in the entire history of it. But now I think he's got perhaps the best coaching staff, most well-rounded coaching staff that it has. These guys will be 2 years in a row as the same exact coaching staff at the University of Alabama, which is unheard of. And I'm telling you right now, you guys better stop sleeping on Alabama. But let's check this out. For 2018, you had Tyson Campbell for the University of Georgia, Adam Anderson. These are all big-time gets. I'm not saying nothing about these guys' development. It's just the fact that these were big-time gets for the University of Georgia, and this is why they had the number 1 class. Brenton Cox, Quay Walker, who they flipped from Alabama. Otis Reese was a big get, flipping him from Michigan. Channing Tindall getting him out of South Carolina. Azeez Ojulari. He's the best player to me on the front, in the front 7 as far as getting pressure. Devod Wilson, like they did a very good job for the 2018 as far as the actual recruiting. Now the development of a lot of these guys, Jordan Davis right here, he may be the best in the front 7. And look, he was a 3-star recruit. They did very good developing this big ass dude, 6'6", 330. So to me, some of these guys would have gone to the University of Alabama. It could have probably been a little bit better. Georgia with 2018, and then this particular class right here as well, this 2019 class, right? Nolan Smith was a heavy contributor for Georgia. Not a superstar by any stretch of the imagination, but he played a ton of football. Nakobe Dean played a ton of football for Georgia. Trayvon Walker played a ton of football for Georgia. Tyreek Stevenson played a ton of football for Georgia. These are all guys, Lewis Seen played. These are all guys that could have been instant contributors for this last Alabama team, right? Had Coach Smart still been at Alabama, like that's crazy to me to think about. Like Coach Smart not being at the University of Alabama the past few years and them having to kind of overcome that with him taking a lot of the elite recruits that may have gone to Alabama with him over there. He essentially ruined Alabama's defensive recruiting, and he essentially ruined Georgia with the expectations and not being able to really see that to fruition at the University of Georgia. So it's like almost like he was holding 2 teams back, if you think about it logically. But obviously, both teams are going to be very good. It's going to be cool to see them both compete this year as well. But I always thought that was kind of interesting. A lot of the recruiting battles Alabama would have won, Georgia won. Because of Coach Smart. He's just the premier recruiter in the country, and he's got the facts to back it up. So let me know what you think about that, guys. How good would have Alabama have been the last couple of seasons had Coach Smart still been there recruiting some of these guys, and you would have had some of these kids at the University of Alabama. So just let me know what you think about that. But as it stands, like I said before, this is really to show these people who didn't understand that Georgia is actually the number 1 recruiting conglomerate in the country until told otherwise. So we'll see how it finishes out this year. It's still extremely early, but a lot of big names to come down the pike, and Georgia's going to do very well this season as well. So it would take a Herculean effort from Alabama to knock Georgia from number 1, and I don't think any other team can actually knock Georgia from number 1 if we're talking about the last 4 years, because then that 2017 year comes off when they were number 3. So they could end up being 3 again, or they could end up being even higher than that. So we'll see. All right. With that being said, man, it's your boy Murf, the Underground King, Top Billin Sports. Let me know some of these recruiting battles, too, that you guys like between Georgia and Alabama that you thought was pivotal. But with that being said, I am out. Peace.
What more can I say?
Top Billin.